Hi, welcome to the Peaceful Home. If you're new here, I'm Teresa Elling. I am a professional organizer, parenting coach, mom of 6. And on this channel, we talk about all things home and family. And today for Vlogtober Day 6, I'm answering a reader's question. 2, in fact. The first one is, how do you do TV with toddlers? And what's an appropriate amount of time for a toddler to be on screen? And the second question is, what are your thoughts on kids and screen time? As kids get older, when do you think they are capable of having their own phone, iPad, computer, etc.? Is it too extreme to say no? So we're going to answer those today. If you're interested, hang on and we'll get right to it. I'm going to start with some stats. And I'm not going to cite all my references. You can go online and do your own research. It's pretty much the same across the board. If you look at all these different studies and recommendations, I'm not saying anything new, just kind of giving you an overview. Some recent studies show that with TV only, not any other screens or internet usage, just television, ages 2 to 11 watch 4.5 hours per day on average. And total screen time for ages 8 to 12 is 4 to 6 hours a day. And for teens, ages 13 to 17, up to 9 hours a day. I think the increase is due to the use of phones. As kids get older and get smartphones, their usage increases. 2/3 of families watch some sort of screen while they eat. 71% of kids have a TV in their own room. And again, this is not accounting for mobile screens, which children have more access to those. They can go anywhere in the house with a screen. And 51% of families report that they have the TV on all the time, meaning it just kind of plays in the background for the majority of the time the family's around. These statistics are alarming to me. And I think we see the evidence of excessive screen time in our society with our children. And as parents, you get to decide what's best for your kids. You do not have to be a statistic. You can decide for your family, for your kids. Stand firm in what your convictions are. That's the first thing I would encourage you in. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this. And I did jot down some notes because I just had so much I want to cover, and I want to make sure I get to all these things. It's recommended pretty much across the board not to have screens for children until 18 months to 2 years of age. One of the reasons is their brain development. They actually cannot equate what they see on the screen with the real world. They don't get it until about 18 months. And now all of a sudden they're watching a video and they go, oh, that's a video of my dad. I know my dad. And it registers. But before that, it doesn't. They're watching bright lights, movement, things like that, but not necessarily having it compute in their brains. But lasting negative effects of TV too soon or too much is a decrease in proper language development, reading, short-term memory, sleep, and the ability to focus. And those are things that we see with our children commonly, and they are tied to screen use. Now, as far as TV playing in the background, and I don't mean just like it's playing all day, but you go and you put a show on for your child, and partway through, they just get up and walk off and start playing, and you let the show continue. So this is what I'm talking about. A study was done that shows that when there is no screen on, parents speak an average of 940 words per hour to their child. When a screen is on, they speak 220 words per hour. So you can see right there the big difference in language development when there is so much less talking and interacting going on. 53% of families said they had no rules at all about screen time. And I'm going to give you some points of why it is so important to be monitoring this with your children. First of all, there is so much violence on a screen today. And while you might not let your 5-year-old watch an R-rated movie, even kid-friendly violence is prevalent, and all of that leads to fear, nightmares, aggressive behavior, and being desensitized to violence. And that's not what we want for our kids. Number two, the influence of media on our children is, more is caught than taught. And there is so much out there that even seems good or maybe is good in the end, but you have to look at what things your child might be trying to emulate. What is he seeing in front of him that looks good, that looks like, in the end, the good guy won, but boy, the bad guy, he got some interesting attention. And it raises questions in our kids, sometimes subconsciously, but they're taking all of that information into their little brains. Number three, excessive TV, so over the, a recommended amount, causes sleep problems, behavioral issues, obesity, and inability to focus. And again, those are commonly what we would call ADHD symptoms. And TV does play a role. We have to be really careful. Number four, it takes away from so much. It substitutes and therefore diminishes real interaction with facial cues. Because you can be talking to a child and not even looking at them. They're watching a screen, they're not looking at you. Also reading, playing outside, using their imagination, eating with the family, and also experiences while you're out. So often these days, the way that parents are managing their children, instead of training, which I do have some videos on how to train children and how we negatively train children, so I encourage you to take a look at those. But so often parents, the only way they know to manage is to give their child a screen as they're walking through Target, to give their child a screen while they're in the car. These are some of the best times to interact with your children. So make sure that you are making it a real experience when you're out. Use the opportunities in the car to talk about real things. Use time in the store to play games, to help your child be observant, to just have a conversation about what you're doing. Getting to phones in particular, this is very interesting. I'm sure many of you have heard that Bill Gates himself did not allow his children to have a smartphone until the age of 14. Now, that is pretty interesting. Statistics show that 1 in 5 children have a phone by the age of 8. And 50% of US kids have a smartphone by the age of 11. 84% of teens have smartphones. There is another new report that came out that showed phone usage between the ages of 8 and 12 is an average of 5 hours a day, and for teens, 7 hours a day. As far as phone usage, we're really coming into a time where our teens, young adults, don't know how to even sit and have a conversation in a group without having a phone. And that disturbs me in particular. It really saddens me to see kids, even in church or in a youth group setting, even in Sunday school, where they have to have a phone and they can't socially interact with their peers. So there's really two issues at stake here. One is the time issue, and the other is the content issue. So the time thing, no matter how great your content is, you can't have your kids on screens, 5 hours a day. It's just too much. It takes away too much from exciting real life. As far as content, we have to be so careful about what our kids are watching. I remember one mom telling me she had her 3rd grader in the back seat, and they had pulled to a stop, and she just felt something wasn't right. And she turned and said, "What are you watching?" And she grabbed it, and it was porn. And her 3rd grader found it somehow on her phone, and she didn't have anything on there. So it's just scary, honestly. It's beyond my ability to recommend resources. I am not media savvy, but I know there are really great resources out there, filters and things where your kids' search histories are emailed to you daily, things like that. Please research that and put those things into place if you are allowing your child to have a smartphone. I do want to talk really quick before I mention what our family did. I do want to talk about the benefits. The benefits of allowing 1 to 2 hours a day of viewing for ages 2 and up. So this would just be passive viewing. You're putting on a video for them so you can make dinner. If you are watching good content, something educational, something wholesome, I don't see any reason why you cannot use this as a tool in your tool belt. Use it carefully. Use it when you need it the most, when you need a break, when things are stressful, maybe at your worst time of day. Maybe you are not a morning person and first thing in the morning you just can't get it together with your kids. Maybe right before dinner is the most stressful time for you. Use that time carefully and to your advantage. Some of the great things about having our children view TV, screens, internet, they can see things that they will never see in person. Maybe a panda bear or the city of Rome or, how a skyscraper is built. Like, these are amazing things that our kids, at the touch of a button, can see right before their eyes. Another thing is learning, for example, watch and do kind of things. So watching a YouTube thing on how to build a tree fort, or a cooking show, how to cook different things, how to sew, how to build model airplanes. There's so much good content that then spurs your child to actually do something. And so that I would recommend the most. And then, of course, there's learning with some interaction. And you'll see this a lot with maybe more of the toddler preschool shows, where they're asking your child questions, they're asking for a response. And those can be really great in the early years. And of course, there's real life connection, like FaceTime or Marco Polo with a grandparent or an aunt or uncle, staying connected as family. That's definitely a great use for smartphones and internet. The rule in our home with our 6 children was that you could not have a phone until you had a job. And so for most of my children, that was not until they were between 16 and 18. Now, this was before smartphones, except for my last couple. And once they had a job and they could pay for the phone themselves and pay the monthly charges, they were allowed to have the phone as long as we had every password and complete access to the phone. So we could pick it up at any time, check it. We had to be friends with them on any type of social media, and we had the final say on certain things that weren't allowed, like Snapchat or TikTok, things like that. So you are the parent. You get to decide. And not only that, I believe that we will be accountable to God for the decisions we make for our children. So this is really important. Fortunately, this didn't happen in our family, but if at any point one of our children was resistant to our guidelines or refused to give us a password, no more phone. It would be that simple. So here are my recommendations for phone usage with your family. First one is they don't get a phone until they truly need it. And texting a friend is not truly needing it. So what I would say is you are involved in an activity outside of the home where you would need use of a phone. So that would mean a job, sports activity, choir practice, something where a parent needs to get a hold of their child. And in that case, you do not need a smartphone. You simply need a phone that will do phone calls and texting. And I would start there. Smartphones, I would wait as long as possible. To be honest, I think high school is a great time. And then you have very carefully spelled out rules and guidelines for the use of that phone. I recommend that all phones are charged in a parent's room or in a lockbox where no one is able to get access until the next morning. We had a rule in our home, really before phones, that no computers were allowed in any of our children's bedrooms. And much later on, actually with one of our daughters, which we didn't feel was as risky. especially, a little more for boys. But we thought, well, she does have things she needs to do, and she can have more privacy in her bedroom. And she came later and let us know that she was addicted to porn. And she had found it and didn't want to tell us about it and kept it a secret for quite a while. Now it's an amazing part of her testimony. And she accepts responsibility for her part, but Kevin and I accept responsibility for our part, which is that we broke our own rule and we allowed her to have her laptop in her room, door closed. So I would not recommend that. It's not about trust, it's about protection. The other thing is, sorry, let me get my notes here. Making sure they're able to pay for their own phone. Parents know all passwords and they're able to check the phone at any time. And probably the most important thing is, even if your child is paying for the phone, you have the last say. You have the last say on the apps they're allowed to have, and you are able to take that phone away if they're not using it within your guidelines. There's a family that I have been organizing for years, and I'm trying to twist their arm into letting me interview them about this subject. But I'll tell you briefly, I recently, while doing a job in their home, found out about their phone policy. And they have quite a large family, and when their kids start high school, they are allowed to have a flip phone, and not before then. So, high school age, that's when you get a flip phone. As soon as you have straight A's, then you're allowed to have a smartphone. And I was pretty surprised by that, mainly because I know very few families that can hold out until high school with giving their child a phone. And I was just so impressed with this family's resolve to stand against peer pressure of other parents, pressure of their children, pressure from their children's peers, to give in and to give their children a phone prematurely. I really would hate to see you look back with regret that your child was exposed to something that was dangerous and harmful to them. So please be very, very careful about the screens in your home. Use passwords and filters and whatever you need to make screens safe for your children. And when they're safe and the content is good, remember to still limit the amount of time. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Peaceful Home.